muted. Can you hear my mic? Yes. I think you're muted. Okay. So, all right. So, is it working now or? Okay. All right. So hopefully everyone can hear me. Sorry, had a little tech difficulty. But welcome to the July 6, 2020 regular meeting of council. We have already called this meeting to order, and we just came out of an executive session. And our first piece of business is to give the oath of office to our new village solicitor, Breanne Parcels. And so I'm going to move over and do that. Also, I have this official. Okay. All right. You're going to have to sign one of these too. All right. You like us here, Sean? Okay, great. All right. And social distance and mask up. All right. So, Breanne, if you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly affirm.
I solemnly affirm
That I will support the Constitution.
that I will support the Constitution
And will obey the laws of the United States.
and will obey the laws of the United States
And the state of Ohio.
and the state of Ohio,
And that I will, in all respects,
and that I will in all respects
observe the provisions of the Charter.
observe the provisions of the Charter
And the ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs.
and the ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs,
And faithfully discharge the duties of.
and will faithfully do the duties of
You can fill this one in. Village solicitor.
the village.
Okay, so actually, let's do the tie thing. Why each other? All right, Breanne, welcome aboard.
Thank
We're
you.
excited to have you here.
I'm
and,
excited to be here.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Thanks again.
Let me
All right.
sign.
Yes, yes. I signed mine. You guys sign it up. And, Okay. Thank you. So, I'm remaining distance, and John, you can still hear me on the mic.
Oh, do you want to sign this one? It's just
Sure.
Okay.
We can sign it when I get back there.
Okay. This one. Okay.
All right. Anything happening now? Should I just take this out? All right, let me just go to my own microphone. All right, is that working?
Can you hear me now? Okay, so we're turning that off. Okay. Okay. Well, now it wants to. Is that working with the mic now?
Yes.
Okay, mic's working.
Camera's up.
Camera's up. Okay, so, all right, I think we are moving forward. Sorry again for tech difficulties. Do we have any announcements? Marianne?
Yes, I would like to thank you, Brian Hausch, for the monumental effort that you made of getting the, whatever we want to call them, the mask ambassadors, COVID ambassadors, whatever. My experience this weekend of sitting downtown was, for the most part, really wonderful. And the masks that were contributed were great. People, for the most part, loved it. And I really appreciate all the work you put in to do that.
Thanks, Marianne. Lisa, any announcements? Nope. Laura?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to announce that Porch Fest is canceled for September, and the group looks forward to planning for 2021. Thank
Sorry to hear that. That's a bummer. And Kevin, any announcements?
None, thanks.
Okay, good. Just a few from me. I wanted to, first of all, mention that the Yellow Springs Pride neighborhood parade was awesome. It was so amazing. And, I want to thank by name the key steering committee members, which were Amy, Heather, Bob. I know that Emily was involved in the mix, Chazlee and Christine. And I know anybody that participated felt that this was, is the mic going out again? Okay, was a really great experience. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that I wanted to remind everyone that the first Monday in August, we do not have a council meeting. So our next council meeting will be July 20th, and then we will pick up again the third Monday of August. Couple other things. I want to make sure that everyone understands how to participate tonight. We've talked about this regularly, but I want to make it clear again. If you would like to make a comment for the meeting, please join the Zoom meeting. I am assuming that the link for the Zoom meeting is posted or will be posted right now in the YouTube chat, as well as in the Facebook live chat. We've mentioned this, that we try our best to monitor the chats, but given the way social media works, it's impossible to keep up with the threads. And most of those conversations don't seem to be related to official comments for the council meeting. If you do not want to get on the Zoom chat, the other option is that you can email our council clerk, Judy Kittner. The easiest way to do that is clerk@yso.com. And I would also like that to go into the chats on both YouTube and Facebook Live. But I assume that if you are able to be on social media, you can join the Zoom meeting and make a formal comment if you would like to do that. Finally, we'll do our best to monitor what's in the chat and share that with council. But we cannot guarantee that we're going to be able to pick up on all those comments. I certainly won't be able to do it while running the meeting. Last thing, again, I want to thank our village team for continuing to step up and respond to all the new things that are coming up. I think it might feel a lot of times that, oh, it's easy to put out 100-yard signs about wearing masks or hang up, the new signs that we see on the poles and across the street, to lay down all the stencils that are on the sidewalks, not to mention for our peace officers to remind people to wear their masks. These are a lot of extra activities that are happening right now and are very important, but they are in the context where we are already scrambling to make sure that we guarantee our normal services. So I want to thank everyone on the village team, council, volunteers, community members, for all coming together to keep things going and to keep our village safe. So with that, I'm going to move into our consent agenda. We've got minutes from 3 meetings on that consent agenda, and I'd love to get a motion to approve that.
I'll move to approve the minutes from all 3 meetings.
Second.
Second.
Great. All those in favor? Actually, let's go ahead and do the roll call, Judy.
Yes. McQueen,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Hausch.
Did you ask me, Judy? Yeah.
I
Yes.
did.
Okay.
Thank you.
You cut out. Okay, great. Next up, we have review of the agenda. Anything that we need to change on our agenda?
I have 2 small additions that can just be folded into the existing agenda. I would like to get council to approve and make comments on the letter I submitted supporting the wildlife habitat. community effort. And I also, when we talk about the declaring racism, health crisis, I'd like to talk about both the celebration of the 4th of July and the particular celebration this past 4th.
Right.
Anything else?
Yes, Brian, I'd like to add, if this is new business, just a nomination for a member of the Human Relations Commission. I'd like to nominate Carmen Lee. I think I've sent information to everyone in the past about her.
Okay, great. So I'm going to add that to new business. Sounds good.
Right.
Anything else?
Brian, I don't know if we need to revisit this now. Maybe staff can chime in, but we may want to rethink the pool policy for the weekends and whether it can be opened up to people other than residents on part of the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or leave it as is.
Yeah, let's talk about that during the manager's report. And it'd be good to, I know Josue was planning to update us on how things are going. So that sounds great. Anything else? All right, Mary Ann, petitions and communication.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of them. So I'm going to go down the list. Most of them were about masks, and most of them were people who wanted either an ordinance or at least some mandated resolution about having masks downtown. Tim Baum, yes, for masks. Priscilla Moore, yes. Eric Clark, yes. He also had concerns about the pool. John Hudson, yes, and also would like not to have the street fair, which we are not doing. Peggy Kobernick, yes, and support the petition that was sent in today to council. Shirley Christensen, yes. Moira Laughlin, yes. Marcia Walgren, yes. Gary Zaremski, yes. Don Johnson, yes. Robin Johnson, yes. And thank you as an out-of-town visitor. Crystal Wilkinson, no, she's from out of town. Wayne Pearson, no. I don't know if he lives in town or not. Jean Lohman, no. Stan Jarris, no, from Waynesville. Ron Geisman, no. And what he had to say was interesting in that he, as a EMT, felt that the way people wear masks actually makes things worse than better. That was an interesting letter. Nancy Blackburn, yes. Bruce Cornett, yes. Lori Askelin, yes. Shelley Ehrlich, yes. Paulette Olson, yes, and had an idea for a waiver people might sign to not hold anyone responsible if they got the virus. Catherine Vander Heiden, yes. Karen Wintrow submitted information about the chamber survey of businesses regarding masks. Laura Curlis submitted a response to Catherine Vander Heiden's letter. Friends Care Community gave a very interesting update of the care that's being taken there, and thanks to the community. John Gudgel submitted a thank you from 365 for all of the work that the police and the staff, but especially the Yellow Springs Police Department has given to support, I think it was 5 demonstrations. Laura Curlis submitted a draft letter to Governor DeWine with suggestions for anti-racist and better policing that could be done regarding state regs. Greene County submitted information about reopening, Greene County Health Department. And I had a draft letter of support for Yellow Springs as a wildlife habitat community.
All right. Thank you, Mary Ann. Laura, do we need to add your letter to the agenda?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, please. Thank you.
So that'll be under new business too. Okay, great. So with that, we're going to move into legislation, and we have the second reading of ordinance 2020-10. Judy, let's do that by title only.
Yes, indeed. This is authorizing the cancellation of utility debt owed to the Village of Yellow Springs, which originates prior to calendar year 2015.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I move. I move.
Okay, and I heard Kevin say second.
Correct.
Josue, can you give us the overview on this one?
Yes, absolutely. Brian, thank you so much. As you know, we have nearly almost $500,000 of outstanding utility bills that have not been paid. The vast majority of these bills are over 6 years old, which limits our ability to collect any of these outstanding utility customers. So we're asking you for the authority to write these off because due to these outstanding bills being 6 years old, we need to collection efforts on them. So the authority to write off everything that's older than 6 years old.
I'm sorry, before you continue, Josue, can you mute everybody, please?
I've muted the one person who was whose audio was coming through, and everyone else is muted now.
All right, thank you. And I think we heard that overview. So the upshot is we can't collect on this anyway. We want to start to shore up the books. We have a much better process in place for this not happening in the future, which was put into place several years ago. So I'm going to open the public hearing because this is our second reading. Are there any questions or comments from council? Okay, not seeing any. Any questions or comments from citizens? All right. And Judy and Josue, let me know if you see something. I'm not seeing anything on Zoom.
Yes, if anyone joining us on Zoom, if you could click on the button to raise your hand to make a comment, that way we can acknowledge you and put you on the queue to speak. Or you could unmute yourselves. I've given you all the ability to unmute yourself, and you can unmute and jump right in with your question or comment.
Thanks, Josue. And if people don't know how to raise their hand yet with Zoom, it's under reactions on most computers, or otherwise it may be under a More tab. And there's a little icon where you can raise your hand. Okay. All right, so Matthew Kirk gave us a thumbs up, so it sounds like he's good. So otherwise, if there are no comments or questions, I'm gonna close the public hearing. And Judy, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, Stokes,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
McQueen,
Yes.
Krieger,
yes,
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Resolution 2020-24. Judy, let's go ahead and do that one by title only as well.
All right, this is appointing Breanne N. Parcels Esquire of Gorman, Beskoff, Henson, and Weinberg as village solicitor for a term of up to 2 years and fixing compensation.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right. Laura, why don't you begin, since you and I were involved in the initial interview process, maybe just letting citizens know kind of what we did, and then we'll have Josue say a few things as well.
Okay, yes. So an RFP went out earlier in the year for proposals, and this is something, correct me somebody, I think every 2 years we should be doing that. And so we did that process. We got a lot of good resumes. The council, we initially scored them. We did Zoom interviews with about 6 people, firms, and we narrowed it down. And then we did in-person interviews just about a couple weeks ago. And the council pretty much unanimously chose Ms. Parcels, and we welcome her to the position of village solicitor. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Josue, you want to add anything?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Laura, for providing us the overview on the process. We had a great number of responses. We had 8 very well qualified responses, and it was a difficult task to evaluate all the great candidates, and we are delighted to have selected Brianne Parcels, and Brianne Parcel has agreed to join us. So great, welcome, Brianne. We're excited to have you. I also want to acknowledge that we are thankful for Coolidge Wall and the work of Christopher Bernard has provided over the years, and we thank him for his many years of service.
Thank you, Josue. Yeah, I want to reiterate how great it's been to work with Chris Connard and Coolidge Wall for all the time I've been on council. And I think, one of the things that Chris really gets is what our community is about. And he always thought about our village values in his decisions. One of the things we're really excited about with Brianne is that not only does she describe herself as a problem solver, but through our interview process, she showed that in so many ways. And we are just so excited about having her creative thinking in the mix, and I mean creative in the sense of applying the law, but thinking beyond that to address problems in ways that really solve those problems. And we are, I know Brianne's already been busy today getting ready for this meeting. So Brianne, we definitely welcome you and look forward to working together. Any other comments before we vote on the resolution? Okay, if not, Judy, I'd love it if you called the roll, please.
I would love to call the roll. Stokes,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Perlis,
Yes.
McQueen,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Resolution 2020-25. And Judy, we can do that by title only as well.
All right, this is approving the Finance Director's 2021 tax budget for the Village of Yellow Springs.
Can I get a motion?
I move.
I
Second.
move.
Second.
Okay, so I've got Marianne as the first and Laura as the second. And all right, Colleen, are you taking this one on? Do we have Colleen, or is it going to be her?
I was trying to get unmuted.
Oh,
Sorry
there
about
she is.
that.
All right,
It's
cool.
hiding behind my laptop. The tax budget is our annual preparation. Basically, it's our financial plan that we submit to the county auditors in order for them to issue the property tax rates. So it's basically giving the county what our estimated resources will be starting in the year, what our tentative revenue and expenses through the year. It's a kind of a draft for our budget that we'll work on in the fall. And again, this is kind of a housekeeping item that we do each year. So I'd entertain any questions that you might have.
All right, thanks, Colleen. Any questions for Colleen?
Colleen, this is Laura. What are the increases in like the personnel and the contractual services? What are those increases primarily due to? Is that COVID or something else?
If you can narrow it down on what increases that you might be wanting me to explain. There's a lot in this tax budget. Is there a certain area, Laura?
Well, the personal services from 2019, it was 1,214,000, went up to 1,355,000. And then contractual services, it's from 2018, they've actually increased 50%. So like in 2018, contractual services were 109, in 2019, 124, and then in the current year, 2020, 158.
So in order to answer that, I really would need to get a detailed report for you. There's a lot that goes into the contractual services. It's not a pinpointed item that I can answer quickly for you. Is that something I can provide you tomorrow?
Yeah, that's fine. This is just to justify, to match the revenues to our expenditures, but it's an estimate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Colleen?
Brian,
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if this is pertinent to the resolution we're on right now, but Megan Bachman can't raise her hand and wants to make a comment. Judith Ezekiel just said her raised hand disappeared. So,
Yeah, and I did see those in the chat.
okay, you got it. I'm sorry, I'm behind.
Yep. No, that's okay. So Megan, did you, well, whatever you have a comment on, you can make it now.
I don't have a comment yet. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Judith, did you have a comment on this or something prior?
No, thank you.
Okay, good. All right.
It just, the configuration, I updated Zoom yesterday and they changed the configuration. You have to go through participants to find the raise my hand now.
Okay. That's good to know because I didn't update it on this computer yet. So, okay. But I will say that you can certainly let us know in the chat on Zoom if you want to make a comment or have a question. Okay. Anything else about the resolution? All right. If not, then Judy, let's call the roll.
All right, McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, next up we have Resolution 2020-26, and Judy, that one can also be title only.
All right, this is authorizing the Village of Yellow Springs to join the Houston Galveston Area Council's HGAC Cooperative Purchasing Program.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Okay, got a second from Lisa. Josue, are you talking about this or Johnny?
It's both of us can cover it, Brian. Thank you.
Great.
We're, as you know, we've been looking to update our sewer, both storm and sanitary lines. One of the major challenges that we are facing is the water infiltration and inflow in our sanitary system. So earlier this year, we started presenting on a proposal to reline the sewers. We start off with a camera inspection of our sanitary lines and to determine what the profile of or the condition of our current lines were. And doing that project, we determined that we need a significant amount of work done in our sanitary lines. While also exploring that, doing that investigative work, we've also looked at the process that we needed to undergo to ensure that we had access to qualified contractors who could do the work at a reasonable cost. One of the challenges that we're facing is that we're such a small municipality that we do not have the purchasing power of large municipalities like Xenia, Fairborn, who do millions of dollars of infrastructure work every year. So we were at a disadvantage to be able to put an RFP out and get great pricing on relining of sanitary lines. So we needed to look at cooperative purchasing programs for us to become a member of and be able to leverage the purchasing power of these associations for us to be able to execute some of our infrastructure work at pre-negotiated prices with an association. So we're bringing before you a request to allow us to join the Houston Galveston Government Council, their purchasing association, for us to do this work here in our community. The Houston Galveston Government Council, they do work in 49 states. So they're across the entire country, and they have part of the membership. They have negotiated pricing with contractors on all infrastructure, repair, maintenance, and improvement work. So we ask for your authority to join this group so that we can leverage their purchasing power to be able to do relining on our sanitary lines at what is a reasonable price to us given our size. Johnny, did I miss anything? You covered it all. Okay. So we've got a couple pieces here in this couple of resolutions in today's meeting. One is to be able to join 2 cooperative purchasing program, and then the group that we will work with within the cooperative program is Insight Piping, and I can cover the details of that contract when that resolution's up.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Josue or Johnny?
Yeah, I just have a quick question, or well, first a comment. I think this is great. Anytime we can get this type of group buying power, I think is a big deal. But can you guys give me, for example, with this particular contract, that 160,000, if we were to go out on our own to try to do that, can you ballpark, what it might have cost or what our potential savings are going to end up being?
Kevin, a lot of the problem is a lot of people would not be interested in this. So we wouldn't have a lot of bidders doing it, but it would probably be, I don't want to say it'd be the same price, but it'd probably be a little bit underneath, but we wouldn't get the bidders and nobody wants to come from the area to be able to do it.
Because of competition or such a small job?
Too small of a job.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, looks great to me. And if there are no other questions or comments, then Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, Krieger.
Yes, and thank you.
Curlis.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes, and thanks for all the work. Yeah.
Hausch.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we've got Resolution 2020-27, which can also be a title only.
All right, this is authorizing the Village of Yellow Springs to participate in the State of Ohio Cooperative Purchasing Program.
Can I get a motion?
I move.
I second.
Second.
All right. Lots of seconds. All right. Josue?
Thank you, Brian. Again, as we were looking to utilize whatever resources we had access to get better pricing for the work that we need done in our community, we also looked at programs that are administered by the state. And this is one of them. The state of Ohio administers its own cooperative purchasing program. And this is run by the state, our own state. So we're asking for permission to join this cooperative program. This will give us access to office equipment, supplies, services, and certain materials that we currently do not have access to with any significant purchasing power. So we ask for your authorization to join this group. This would not cost us anything. Typically, this costs municipalities $100 for the year as the annual membership, but given the COVID impacts, the state is waiving the fee, and we'll have access to the purchasing power of the state.
That's great. Questions or comments for Josue? All right. If not, Judy, if you could please call the roll.
Yes, McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And our last resolution is 2020-28, and that again can be read in by title only, please.
All right, this is authorizing the village manager to submit a purchase order to Insight Pipe Contracting LLC, an HGAC by contractor for $160,000 for the relining of select sanitary sewer lines situated in the Village of Yellow Springs.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Josue and Johnny.
All right, John.
Okay, this is a contract to reline about 3,800 feet of 8-inch sewer line. When we had it cambered, we had almost 15,000 feet cambered. 1,000 to 1,500 feet cannot be cambered. But the 3,800 feet that they identified is the pricing that we got, roughly about $160,000 to be able to do that. And it's in multiple areas. In your packet, you should have a map there that shows you the number 4s and 5s that will show you what areas we will be working in.
Okay. Questions or comments?
Johnny, can you talk about why some areas can't be cambered, if I understood you correctly?
Yes. What's that? You're going to share the screen? Yeah, you can share the screen. So some of the areas that can't be cambered, Marianne, is because either there is a collapse and they can't get the camera by there, or what's commonly right now is the laterals have been shoved too far into the main able to get the camera by there. So we have to go and dig up where the laterals are and make sure. So we're going to try another method by a push camera, so we can try to identify some of the areas that we need to do. But that would take a little bit to be able to get to.
So are you going to be able to do all of the solid red?
All the solid red and the solid orange. What is dashed in red, Marianne, is what's not camberable.
Right.
I couldn't get
Well,
it.
I think this is great.
All the solid red, all the solid orange is the immediate stuff that's going to be, 5 is defective immediately. Some of the 5s, we should really put it out there. We probably will on some of the condition of the pipes over the years that have deteriorated. So it'll be a better system once we get the lining in.
Well, I really appreciate everything staff has done and the help, I guess, that Vectren indirectly gave us. This is so important. This is the kind of thing that, well, we let go for decades and most communities let go and you never see it, but it's some of the most important work that we can do. So thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I am not seeing any. And by the way, Matthew Kirk, we noticed your comment in the chat, and I appreciate that as well. All right, Judy, let's call the roll.
Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Curlis.
A resounding yes, thank you.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're now moving into citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda where if you'd like to make comments about any item not on the agenda, we will give you up to 3 minutes, but we will stop you at 3 minutes. And I guess just to be clear, if you do want to talk about masks, that is coming up next. So anything not on the agenda, we welcome any concerns. All right. So, not seeing any hands or chats. Okay. So, I'm going to assume that we do not have any citizen concerns. All right. We're going to move into special reports then. And first up is getting an update on the dog park initiative. And Johnny, I believe this one is you.
It is me, and I have Richard Lapidi on Zoom and Beth Miller. We've been working hard, and we got put on hold there for a while, but we're back at it strong. In your packets, a little bit of what we've been working on, and I will let Beth and Richard voice any or if you have any questions, we can ask them as well. But the dog park will be going, or talked about going at the water towers on the north side. And we will have 2 separate areas, one for small dogs, one for large dogs. 2 drinking stations. We got some benches out there. And all this will be done by private funds. The village is not putting any dollar amount into the dog park to get it up and running. And they are working on trying to get funds to be able to help maintain and pay for the upkeep. So if you have any questions, the Beth Miller, the professionals online from Wagtown, and Richard Lapede.
All right, excellent. Beth, did you want to add anything?
Yes, let me see. Were there any specific questions with regard to the map, first of all? Does everyone know what we're talking about in terms of location? I'll take that as a yes.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, a little bit of background about how we actually, Brian, you and I met at an event and discussed a little bit about regional vibrancy and how to establish a better brand for your community if that matches the desires of the community. So we took a look at what has been done before, and it looks like it's come up over the last 6 or 7 years, what I could find even in the minutes for the meetings prior, that there has been some interest over the years, but not a lot of forward motion when there's so little expertise out there to do it correctly. So I quit my job in 2016 to become that expert. So I'm enjoying working with the team at Yellow Springs. It's a fabulous project so far. If we can make it happen, it's going to be a great reflection of the community. So I welcome any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
And it's not about the layout, but once this project is up and running, how can we be ensured that it will be maintained? What sort of mechanism or group is going to do this?
Right. Well, we've identified a couple of people that we would like to put on what we call a tiger team that would put together a nonprofit that would be able to do fundraising for ongoing operational costs, but also to fundraise and gather volunteers, but also deal with any crisis communication, any issues with law enforcement or Greene County Animal Resource Center, any of the partners that are involved. They help make that relationship between the village and the users much more fluid. So that, I think, is an important component of most successful dog parks that we've seen. There really needs to be a group of citizens or users that are behind the project and are willing to commit some volunteer time to making sure that it stays a great experience for the humans and the dogs.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And I think as part of this project, at least the plans for the nonprofit, and I think probably making it a nonprofit is a good idea. I think that should be part of this project so that we can be assured that it's going to be maintained in the long term, because we run into issues of that not happening and then people forget who did what.
Right. Now, I think a really important component of the total end plan would include that information. It should already be starting up as soon as the village decides they would want to move forward with this. That would be something that we would hit the ground running on immediately, because you really need to have that. A lot of people, as you know, build capital projects with no thought of down the line how it's going to be maintained or operationally paid for. So I think that's a critical component of who's in charge of what, who is responsible for what, and how does that all break down in terms of responsibilities, including the financial part.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions for Beth?
Yeah, I have a quickie. At the risk of sounding ignorant, as a dog owner, what is a dog-friendly bench for seating? What characteristics are we talking about here?
That's a great question, Kevin. What kind of dog do you have?
She's part poodle, part terrier, about 22 pounds on a good day, but coming in at about 24 right now.
Understood. Well, what a dog-friendly bench is, if you can imagine a slat bench, probably your dog's paws may go through those slats and get caught there. So we don't want to create any hazards for the humans, but also for the animals in the play area. Good
All
question.
right. Great,
Yep.
thanks.
Sure.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Megan had a question.
Right.
Yes, okay. Megan?
Yeah, I'm just curious, the estimated installation costs and the estimated ongoing costs.
Okay. I think Johnny and I both have a sheet of that available, and he may have some specific answers with regard to village things that are already in the process. But I think that the overall estimated budget for capital and operationals for the first year was $55,600. And our primary goal is to have that happen for the community without having an impact financially on the village.
Lost you there for a minute.
Oh, lost me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Where shall I start? The beginning?
55,000 left out.
Oh, okay. So you heard that part. Yeah, 55,600 was the total cost. And let me look and see, I can rattle off for you a few of the expenses that we have in there, because what we'll have is some ongoing things like maintenance and mowing, the removal of the waste materials. We've got a porta potty scheduled up there. We'll have probably a schedule that will be pretty tight, making sure that the fence line is okay and that there's no damage or hazards in the area. So a lot of those things would be taken on by that volunteer group, the association. And some of that is something that the village would take on just because they're already up there. So the sight line around the water towers, obviously they could, put up a red flare for those. The other things we would rely on the citizens and the users to help the park staff and the rec staff be able to manage all of those moving parts on that. So a few of the things that would impact that are going to be monthly expenses that, again, would most likely be covered in full by volunteerism and fundraisers and things like that. So not a huge amount of money. Most of it is in the capital expenses. There are some things that you can add to a dog park that I don't think are necessary at this point in time. There are a couple of other things that are not very sustainable solutions, so I wouldn't recommend them for your community at all. So I think it's going to be a lion's share of it will be in this first year of construction. And then following that, we'll have to take a look at what kind of bids we can get, what kind of materials people might be willing to provide in kind, and any volunteerism hours that we could rely on. So it'll be a combination of those. I can provide a breakdown of separating out the ongoing expenses versus the capital, if that would be helpful.
Sure.
Okay. Consider it done.
It's one thing that we ought to note on this is just the first phase. We're not trying to build everything out all at one time. So then they can have fundraisers to raise money to continue to develop the dog park as it goes forward.
Yes. Okay. And then I know I saw Pan had a question about just kind of like clarifying location in terms of the pool and the sledding hill and all that. Do you want to just help everyone understand that, Johnny?
Do you have this? Is it showed up on the screen?
I can pull up the GIS map if that would be helpful.
If you look at the pool, it's to the left is where the water towers is, and it is on the north side of the water towers. So it is completely away from everything. You're going to see maybe one house in Talus Court. It's on the backside of Talus is where it's at.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There to the left, right in that area.
Yeah. So right where the mouse cruiser is, these two circles are water towers, and they're labeled there water towers.
And it will not be affecting the sledding hill. Sledding hill is still available.
Right. Sledding hill is up here, right next to where the label says Gone Park. So that will remain intact. The access road remains in place for access to the dog park. So access will be down this gravel road, up this hill here, and here will be the entrance. I will switch over to the other graphic, which overlays the design concept. So that side of the hill is here, either two water towers. This will be the designated dog park area.
Okay, thank you.
This is Lisa. I have a quick question. I appreciate that there's an accessible porta potty. Will there be any parking spots up at the dog park for differently abled people, or do they have to come up that road?
We have talked about that, Lisa. We're going to try to designate at least one, if not two, for handicap accessible parking up in that area. And hopefully we'll have that done as soon as it opens.
Thank you very much, Johnny.
One of the challenges that we've identified is that this is a long stretch of road and it's an area that is used during the winter time for sledding. So if we built that parking here, we would create a barrier between at the bottom of the hill, and that would limit the winter activities that the hill is used for.
How large is the overall area, Megan asked? Proposed?
It's a little over 1.25 acres, if I'm not mistaken. I would have to go back and look at Google Earth and get the measurements.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Great. Any other questions for Beth or Johnny? Richard, did you want to say anything?
I think he's speaking, but we're not, he's not coming through.
All right, Richard, we think you're muted.
Or microphone not working. It says he's unmuted.
Can you unmute it on your keyboard, Richard? Oh, Maureen to the rescue.
While we wait for Richard, Megan asked the question, how large is the area? And it's slightly over 1 acre, so maybe 1.25 acres.
And there are a few other questions in the chat, in the Google chat as well.
Yeah, Karen's question is going to be our next steps thing. So did you see something else that we missed?
I know Matthew Kirk about signage.
Signage to get into the park?
There's
Or in general?
We have a $2,500 allotment for signage to get to the dog park.
Yeah, we'll want to include things like wayfinding when you get to the parking area so people know where to go. We don't want people wandering around the parking lot trying to figure out where to go with their dogs. In terms of parking, generally speaking, people who use a dog park are only there for 35 to 45 minutes max. You go in, they play, and you leave. So it doesn't take up a lot of space in the parking lot, but we'll want to make sure that they know where to go when they get there. In terms of at the site, we want to make sure that we have a couple of things. One is rules for dogs. Another one is rules for humans, as well as, information about what to do if there's an incident at the park, any kind of hours, all those kinds of nifty information pieces, but also recognition for members of the community who have really contributed to the project and shines a light on some of the arts and culture pieces that we want to include in the project.
Great. Well, if we don't get Richard on the line, I do want to say that we really appreciate that Richard has been a champion for this project and is brought it forward. As Johnny said, there's been a bit of a delay for obvious reasons, but I definitely feel like this is something our community has wanted for a long time, and it's a great time to have it. So, when Karen asked in the chat, what's the timeline for this, I'm guessing that kind of relates to talking about next steps.
Right.
So, Johnny, Josue, do you guys have thoughts about what does council need to do? Where do we go from here?
I think that's what we was going to ask council on. Do you want us to proceed with timelines We had actually talked about timelines, but COVID happened, so it backed it off. So if council's okay with us moving forward, we'll start on a timeline and then start with some of the fundraising. Richard and them will start with that and we'll move forward.
Okay. We have a Gantt chart started that will timeline the entire process. And I've altered it to take the dates off of it so that whenever we are allowed to kind of scale things in and out because of the pandemic, that will give us some flexibility, but at least we'll know this component will take 3 weeks and it can go at the same time as this one that takes 5 weeks and who's responsible and all those things. So it'll be kept to a timeline of succession. We just don't know when that'll plug in. A lot of that obviously depends on what you decide to do in terms of moving forward, but also, you know, the times.
Right. And I do see Richard's comment in the chat that the land being used for this park was fallow behind the fence. Setting up an association that can partner with the village is fundamental. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. So do we have any other comments or questions before we talk about next steps specifically? Okay, well, I will just say it looks awesome. I agree with all the comments about this being amazing. I appreciate the work. I'd like to see us move forward. I think it's a win-win all the way around. I don't know how other council members feel. I see thumbs ups. All right. So I think that means Johnny, Beth, Richard, you have, I don't want to call them marching orders. You have our encouragement to keep on doing the great work. And yeah, and it sounds like Karen Gardner's ready to take that dog out there. So
Barking. They have barking orders.
Barking, there you go. Thank
Wanted
you.
to introduce, this is Tom, the chief petting officer for the company. It's a horrible job. He has to pet all the dogs. I want to thank everyone who has been attendance with the Zoom. And the questions, feel free to send questions to me at beth@wagtown.org if you have specific questions about dog parks, dog friendliness in general. And obviously we'll defer to Johnny and Richard and moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you guys. This is great stuff to have in meetings during these times. Okay, we have one other special report, and that is about the sanitary line. And looks like that's Johnny as well.
The general update. So early in the year, we brought to council the concerns that we had around infiltration and inflow. The examples that we gave that on several high weather activity, high rainstorms, our system can take or has taken a little over 6 million gallons of water, when on a dry day, our sanitary system averages around 250,000 gallons of water a day. So the major challenge is due to infiltration and inflow that's directly related to the conditions of our sanitary line. So our suspicions were confirmed with the project that was undertaken under the leadership of Johnny to have a video inspection of all of our sanitary lines that clearly demonstrated that we had significant deterioration in our system, that if we did not take urgent action, we could potentially have lines collapsing underneath in our service area, and that would be more costly. So this is one of the activities that we said we must do to reduce the infiltration and inflow in our sanitary line, but also to ensure the integrity of our sanitary line system. So relining sanitary lines is top priority. We've done some clean outs, we've replaced lids, and a lot more work that's been done to improve the conditions on a sanitary line. You want to go into details?
Well, I want to make sure that everybody knows we've not got everything cambered. We've only cambered about 3.5 miles of line versus the 29 miles that we have. So this is the step forward. We've done a lot of work in the last couple of years. If you see the GIS system that, are you sharing that?
I'm going to share the screen right now.
We have actually got this built into our GIS system, And we have a lot of cameraing done by Vectren, but everything that is colored was cambered by us as well, so we get the sewer pricing for the relining. But Vectren has cambered a lot of these. We've actually taken out 3 gas lines that ran through our sewers this year. So we've made some major improvements. On top of the storm, we've done 3 storm projects, and we're looking at doing some more of those. So on top of the cameraing we're going to do, or the relining we're scheduled to do this year, we're going to do some more cameraing and see what our next phase needs to be.
And one of the guiding principles around which section of the town to survey first is that we look at our records on when the sanitary lines were installed. So the lines that have been that have received a video inspection are some of our oldest lines.
It is what RCAP highly recommended because of the water table.
Right.
They felt that the area that we cambered now was highly recommended by RCAP because of the water table that was under the ground.
Right, and the outcome was another analysis that we had done.
Analysis that they did in 2012.
Right. So some of this work is following up on recommendations from 2012 that work that needed to be done, and we're taking care of it now. So what you see on your screen is our overall system, and as Johnny stated, they've done a great job putting this in our GIS system. So now we have this on a computer system, and we're tracking it. But not only are we tracking it, Johnny has built out a system where any work that we do on the lines or the valves or any of the underground assets, we can notate that on our tracking system. So if there's any work that's done on any particular section of the pipe, there's a record to go with it, and it doesn't sit on someone's computer or someone's desk and it's lost. We have a centralized database where we keep track of our underground system.
And the best part about this system that we've got now is the guys are able to see this live on their phones. So when they're out at the job site, they're actually taking pictures, they're logging it into the system. So we can look at this live, and what they upload is immediately there.
And Johnny, is this a system that we worked with LJB to create, or is it something else?
This is a system we worked with LJB, and the work order system with iWorks is incorporated into this system. We've used both companies to actually work together. So LJB has got the GIS part of it. iWorks has got the work order software, and they communicate to each other, so it's always live.
Great.
And if you haven't had a chance to see iWorks yet, please go on, look at our Facebook and YouTube video that we uploaded today, and I'll be speaking on that later during my manager's report.
All right, thanks, Josue. Do we have any questions for Johnny or Josue? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Saw Matthew's comment, so we've got that. Definitely thinking about the bigger picture with infrastructure, and it'll be part of future discussions. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. So I think we're going to move into old business. All right. So I think I'm going to kick this one off since I spent over 20 hours downtown this weekend as part of the Mask Ambassador Initiative. So I wanted to just kind of describe it a little bit. Josue, did we end up getting some pictures together for this, or?
Brian, I'm sorry, not yet. We will get some up on the screen.
Hey, okay. If they pop up, great. If not, people can see them later. So I wanted to mention, first of all, some really positive stuff related to the initiative. I had put out on Facebook that we ended up having 17 volunteers over the weekend. I'm going to quickly read their names for 2 reasons. One, because to be out in 90+ degree weather in a mask and being positive and interacting with folks is a big deal, no matter whether you're doing it for 10 minutes or 10 hours. But I also wanted to mention folks because these people all had extensive observations, interactions, engagements with folks. Nothing got negative. There was a concern early on about escalation. That wasn't what this was about, and people really understood that, I think, on all sides. So I would be, I think these people would all be happy for you to reach out to them if you want to hear their experiences and understand more. And these may be some people that you know and trust. So those folks were Scott Bachman, Cindy Seek, Heather Stewart Rigsby, Kaylee Butler, Samantha Snyder. By the way, those were 2 high school students. Frank Jennings, Mark Carr, Jim Johnson, Wayne Goulden, Gary Wireman, Mayor Pam Canine, Councilmember Mary Ann McQueen, Councilmember Laura Curlis, and John Fee was in the mix drumming. Chief Brian Carlson, Josue, and Pat DeWeese were our key volunteers. And those awesome yellow shirts.
Karen Winthrop.
Oh, what did I say, McKee? Sorry, Karen Winthrop, yes. Oh, Karen Winthrop was in the mix, yes, definitely. The t-shirts that we had were donated by Yellow Springer Tees. And I think another cool thing about the initiative is we wanted to prioritize safety, but we also wanted to make sure that we could do whatever we could to support our local businesses. They're selling masks. I will say by the end of the 3 days, a lot of them were almost out of masks. We got a lot of them into people's hands. We, by my count, raised just above $1,700 this weekend. And that is money that's going into the local economy while helping to keep our community safe. I think one of the things that people probably saw that I mentioned on Facebook was that if we're going with the Dayton standard of wearing a mask if you can't be 6 feet apart, over those 3 days, I consistently saw around 95% compliance. I do understand that there are a lot of different ways that that folks look at what is compliance and what is not. And I think that has helped me to understand a little bit more about why we all see different things when we do check out what's going on with face coverings downtown. But again, I do want to, highlight that the Dayton ordinance, and I believe Columbus and Cincinnati are following the same direction, does emphasize that masks are required when you cannot be 6 feet apart. Believe it or not, on Friday and Sunday, actually Saturday and Sunday, downtown was pretty slow most of the day. And there were plenty of times when there were only a few people on the sidewalks. Friday was a little bit busier, and that's obviously where face coverings become even more important. So I'm going to stop there because we do have some other folks that were volunteering this week that might want to say something that are on the call. And then I know there are other comments related to face coverings and where we should go next. But I wanted to start out with just, I think we saw a lot of positive stuff. I think that because of other cities finally moving forward, it's becoming more normalized. And the bottom line is most of the time we spent thanking people for wearing their masks, and a lot of people upgraded their masks because it was so hot. The paper masks were starting to rip apart and that sort of thing. And it said a lot for our community. Last thing I'll point out, we had a couple from Cincinnati that said they specifically came to Yellow Springs because they knew people would be wearing masks and they felt safe here. And they said that was not happening in Cincinnati. We had another couple from Dayton saying, it's so amazing that you're out here being proactive about putting masks in people's hands. This is not happening in Dayton, but someone shared with me today that Dayton is starting to give out masks as well. So it's obviously part of how we change behavior. So with that, I know I saw Cindy Seek on the line. So Cindy, if you want to share any thoughts, and then we'll open it up to Simone.
Well, I'm happy to share. I can't figure out how to raise my hand. But I'm happy to talk about my experience. I think exactly what you said about normalizing, both the behavior of wearing a mask and talking to people about wearing one is what's really important. I volunteered because my training is in public health, specifically health education. And so this type of, promoting and encouraging healthy behaviors is something that I really care about and I have a lot of experience with. Going into it, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know if people would be annoyed at being asked to wear a mask or if they would push back, on the idea that they had to wear one. But overall, it was really super encouraging. Even just walking to the tent when I arrived downtown, I saw a lot of people wearing masks. I mean, I would say probably 80 to 90%. When people came up to the table, nearly all of them were already wearing a mask and they were just looking to see, what other types were available or to upgrade from a disposable mask. They talked about their experiences with getting used to wearing a mask and trying on different styles and just kind of shared their thoughts about what it's like as we're adjusting to this new normal. And I think those discussions are so important for encouraging lasting behavior change. And I really can't emphasize that enough. We need that little social reward. We need to know that others share our challenges and our fears because we're all adjusting to these behaviors in an incredibly stressful time. And of course, we need to adjust quickly, but I felt like this was a pretty strong reinforcer of that behavior. And I think that, we all know we're going to be wearing masks and physical distancing and all of that for a long time. I think if this experience showed me anything, it's that we need to continue that kind of encouragement. People are at different stages of how comfortable they are wearing masks, even though there is so much evidence to support why we need it. And I think even with the threat of a fine, those who really don't want to wear one are still only going to comply when they think they might actually get caught. And our police officers can't possibly be everywhere at every time. So I think fine or no, really talking with each other about our experiences, learning to speak up to each other and ask for compliance, those are also critical components to making lasting changes. And I certainly would be happy to do this kind of thing again.
Thanks a lot, Cindy. And yeah, it was cool to hear so many folks that, said they would be interested in doing this again if we, kept up the initiative. I also saw Frank Jennings on the line. Frank, do you want to say anything?
And Brian, before the next comment, I'm
yeah.
up on the screen.
Yeah, I see those. Thank you. Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. Listen, I want to make sure that we mention Tom's because I didn't even tell you this, but right after we set up on Friday, the Emporium table there, somebody from Tom's came over and offered.
We're having a hard time hearing you. Frank?
Okay, I'm sorry about that. You should be able to hear me fine now. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So listen, I'm just going to go, and if you can't hear me, that's fine. But listen, Tom's came over and offered us some lunch on that first day we set up, and nobody else knew about it. We had just set up, and so we didn't eat. So I want to make sure that we mention them. The thing about these masks is when these guys would come by and walking down the road, it was, the important thing was just to start the uncomfortable conversation and make some kind of inroads to these people. There was only 3 groups of people. There were people that were wearing masks. There were people that wanted masks. And then there were people that refused to wear masks. And all we did was tell the people that you can tell who refused to wear a mask, but we let them know, what we wanted and offered them a mask. But it was very clear. There was absolutely no confrontation that I saw in 3 days down there. And finally, there was a lot of chatter on Facebook and stuff about seeing people downtown with masks on. Well, having sat down there for 3 days now with a mask on in 90-degree heat, I can tell you that you've got to take that mask off from time to time. And people walk to the side and they stand out a few feet from people and they take that mask off and get some breaths. and maybe that counts against as a violation against our code, but it really has to be done, and we have to expect to see people without masks for a few minutes. Anyway, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Frank. And yeah, I guess I do want to reiterate not only Karen Wintrow being in the mix over the weekend, but also the chamber really supporting this initiative with the pop-up tents and the tables and just so many other things, and helping to get the word out to the businesses. So yeah, thanks again, Karen and Alex. Okay, so I expect we have some other folks that would like to make comments.
Brian?
Yes.
Brian, could I say something?
Please do, Marianne.
Yeah. So I would agree that by and large, it seemed like 90% of the people were wearing masks. I did go up to a couple men and basically was told off. I did confront them and they told me where I could go or what they thought of what I was saying. It's amazing some of the theories that some people have about this. But I have two comments. My concern is two areas, and these are our people, because it's my sense that for the most part, our visitors now are wearing masks. But I think young people, or at least particularly the young people the people that hang out around the GOAT, are not wearing masks. At least that's my experience. And I think we need to be more proactive with that group. The other thing, there was this interesting article in Scientific American about men who don't want to wear masks. A particular group of men feel apparently that it's a sort of against their male ego. It was compared to like men who don't want to wear condoms. They don't want to wear masks. And we heard some of this. And unfortunately, we have at least one very influential man who hangs out downtown who doesn't wear a mask. And the younger men who follow him around are not wearing masks either. And that is a problem. It's just like President Trump impacts a lot of people. So when we have someone downtown who's very influential and they refuse to wear a mask, it's a problem. So those, I think, are the two instances, and there are people that we need to encourage. I mean, at least say, hey, I don't want to have an ordinance, but if we're going to have our own people who aren't going to do this, that would be what would, I think, force us to do that.
Yep. Thanks, Marianne. I know Karen Wintrow has asked to comment.
Brian, can you hear me, Brian?
We can.
Okay, good. First of all, I just want to thank you guys. I helped a little bit. I was down there a little, but it was incredible. It was three very hot days. So I really appreciate you guys doing what you did. My frame of reference, I have a few frames of reference. One is hearing from our businesses, and our businesses are reporting 100% compliance. I mean, there are businesses that absolutely require masks, so they're obviously getting 100% compliance, or people aren't coming in. But even from the businesses who are not necessarily asking people to leave, they are still seeing nearly 100% compliance from their customers. They're not hearing negativity. They aren't concerned about losing customers. They're very committed to this. So you do, excuse me, Matthew, you do have very strong business support for the current legislation, for the current resolution. I am at the train station nearly every day. The people that come in to use the restroom are wearing masks. So if they're wearing masks to come in to use the restroom, I can only assume that they are wearing masks as they're arriving. I'm getting a lot of phone calls. You mentioned the couple from Cincinnati. I probably had talked to them on the phone that day, because I got a call from people from Cincinnati. I got a call from people today who are happy to come to Yellow Springs because they do feel safe here. So I think visitors think that there is a requirement to wear masks. They are not making a distinction between an ordinance and not an ordinance, or and a resolution. So I'm happy. I think that there is satisfaction with the business community with how the current resolution is working. We're continually putting out our messaging and updating our messaging, and to reach more and more people and to make it more and more effective. And I think that that's the best thing we can do. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. So I know Pan's on the call, and I know Pan and his wife spent some time downtown. Pan, do you want to share what you observed?
Hi, Brian. Thank you. So my wife made a tour of downtown, a walking tour. We did Xenia Avenue, and then Dayton Street, and then the other side of Xenia Avenue. We counted only the people on the side of the sidewalk. We did not count anyone who was eating or drinking away from people, or sitting or standing away from other people. We did not count them at all. We only counted people that were on the sidewalk moving with other folks. And we counted 118 people wearing masks and 58 not. So our experience is not the 90 and 95% estimates that you were sharing. We're seeing about 66% with mask and 33% without. And when we made our loop, there was no one in front of the goat. There were two people in front of the goat, and they both had masks on. So these numbers are not skewed by the large number of people who often congregate outside the goat. We did not count anyone who was eating. We didn't count anyone at the COVID cone, the corner cone. The people that were standing in line close to each other without masks, we did count. So to us, those numbers, 33% without, it's still pretty dangerous. And we feel that, in fact, we know that there are a number of business owners who disagree with what Karen was just saying, that feel that we do want an enforceable ordinance. As a volunteer ranger in the Glen, pretty much every single person that I've had to escort out were not from Yellow Springs, and none of them had masks on. It's still a problem. I feel that it's being glossed over. So that's what I wanted to share. I feel that the reason that we've not seen COVID-19 a lot in Yellow Springs is because the people living here have been very cognizant and believing in the pandemic and wearing masks. And now we have tens of thousands of guests coming from other areas in Ohio where the number of COVID-19 is skyrocketing. I work at the Valley, and it's becoming very, very high. And I encourage you to be proactive in addressing this to keep us safe, rather than reactive when we start seeing people getting sick and dying. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Pan. All right, let's see. I see some things in the chat, and I do want to hear from other council members, but do we have other community members that would like to say anything? Okay, I see Megan.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
I want to ask about this issue about media and messaging, because I have to say I was a little bit surprised that the Dayton media reported from the last meeting that Yellow Springs has already mandated masks. Yellow Springs First Ohio Community to require masks by law, the Dayton Daily News, YS mandates masks, Fairborn Daily Herald, Yellow Springs passes mask ordinance, WHIO, Dayton 24/7 called it both a resolution and an ordinance. I don't know if that's possible. And this all despite the fact that we did not pass an ordinance as a community. And it's weird. It's like we have two impressions. In the community, people still know that we didn't pass an ordinance. All the letters, many letters this week to council show that. But outside of the community, it feels like that there's kind of a mistaken impression. I don't know exactly how that mistaken impression kind of got out there and got replicated, but it's a little bit worrisome and a little bit disingenuous, I find, although it does serve the village's purpose. So if Yellow Springs is already the first community in Ohio to pass a mask mandate, then it seems to me there's not a very high risk to actually passing the mask mandate. So I guess I'm curious kind of your thoughts about that. And also to say that, you know, what happened really quickly at the last meeting, that a resolution was kind of thrust, you know, in the middle of the debate about the ordinance. I would like council to just have a vote on the ordinance, on a possible ordinance, just to see where council members stand on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. And I think it's worth, I think I'm probably the best person to respond to a couple of those things. So let me start out by saying that, you know, I understand that it's never ideal for us not to have a potential, you know, resolution or ordinance in the packet, but we're trying to respond rapidly to keep the community as safe as possible. We had no idea where that discussion was going to go at the last council meeting. And actually right before the meeting, I had some pieces from Chris Connard and from Judy Kittner. I put something together because I knew that we might want to take action. So I'm going to say that that is not something we would typically do, but I think in this kind of situation, it's the right thing to do, and it was better than waiting for 3 weeks for the next meeting. You know, that being said, there's also some stuff that we're probably going to look at tonight that you know, we just kind of scrambled because based on what we saw this weekend, there are some things that we think we can do to make it even safer. But, you know, I think keep in mind that when we did decide, let's make a formal statement that you need to wear a mask downtown, as well as distance and hand hygiene, that we also said we would continue to revisit this like we've been doing with all the, you know, COVID-19 response. We're just not in an ideal time. The other thing related to, I guess, the disingenuousness. So I've done a lot of research. You know, I don't have a medical degree, but I do have a law degree and an MBA, and have a fair amount of experience in a lot of areas. So I've done a lot of research about the different models of enforcement. And there are two distinct schools. There's the deterrent school, which is about being punitive and fine them and misdemeanors and that sort of thing. And there's the compliance school, which is about being conciliatory, which is about like working on like, you know, kind of what Mary Ann referred to, that the people around you need to be showing these behaviors. Otherwise, you're going to ignore authority. And I firmly believe that the latter is in line with our village values. And I especially think that sort of to what Laura's brought up in some of her letters and posts, that we're in a time where I'm not really sure that it makes a lot of sense to be more punitive. And again, it is working. The bottom line is when we approached people that didn't have masks coming in, we let them know you need to wear a mask downtown. So I think this sort of like, I guess, piecing apart, like it's technically this or that, and focusing on the mechanism is the wrong place to focus. We need to focus on solutions. And so I think we will talk about whether we make it an ordinance tonight. I expect council members want to do that. But, you know, I think the caution here is that regardless of whether we have that fine or not, all that's going to happen is then it's going to be, well, why aren't you enforcing it? And why did this person and that person? And that's when I start to see escalation. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea, but I'm open and I've continued to listen. But I will say there are different ways to enforce expectations, and those are codified in the law. Okay, other comments, questions?
This is Lisa. I'd like to say something.
Please do. Thanks, Lisa.
So, yeah, first of all, I want to say thank you to the volunteers who put themselves at risk to try to get, at least for a small percentage of time on a holiday weekend, mask compliance up to some level. I know every person with a mask on is better than any person without a mask on. But all you need is one infected person walking around without a mask. And it doesn't matter if you're wearing a mask, you can become infected. Your mask does not protect you. You are at risk. I've been reading a book called Pandemic by Sonia Shah, S-H-A-H. And she talks about 4 different types of reactions historically to pandemics. And these are lethal apathy, enemy versus victor, sustained engagement, and fatal fear. And I certainly see all 4 of those as microcosms in our community, as it often is. What we have to demonstrate is sustained engagement. It's the most adaptive reaction. We have to keep understanding that this is going to go on for a long time. We cannot wait. It is not getting better. This isn't even the end of the first wave. We have to do everything we can. In the last council meeting, I called for this council to vote on an enforceable ordinance. The council did not move in that direction, and there was progress made by having an affirmation that we were going to do this. And I really think the new signage downtown is a lot more direct and affirmative. All of these things are steps. I call again tonight for this council to do it and make this an enforceable ordinance. We have to do it. We're putting it off, and we need to do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, let's go ahead and hear from other council members, and then we'll have other citizens weigh in. Kevin, thoughts?
So, yeah, I just, again, want to commend all the efforts that everyone's gone through in terms of, you know, all the signage, all the work that's been gone forward. It has been effective, absolutely, and I applaud everyone for their efforts. At the end of the day, because we don't really know where we are in the entire timeline, but I think we should anticipate that we're at the front end instead of the tail end of this thing. I was in upstate New York this weekend, and having a state mandate really did simplify things. I mean, it made it pretty straightforward. You know, everyone's required to wear a mask, and it was just there. I don't know where they are on enforcement, and you know, if we do move forward with an ordinance, we all acknowledge that enforcement has some challenges. But again, at the end of the day, I think it's important to just simplify things. For us to go ahead and make that bold step. To Megan's point, you're right. Half the world thinks we already have an ordinance that we're not enforcing. You know, so it really is not much more of a leap to go ahead and formally do it. But I guess I just want to just make us all consider what the ramifications could be with respect to enforcement. But I think at the end of the day, it does just simplify things to go ahead and do the ordinance and perhaps just tie a bow, if you will, on the discussion. So I'm in favor of an ordinance.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Laura Curlis.
Thank you. I've thought a lot about what an ordinance would contain. I've asked the community on Facebook to give me helpful input because I've thought about how would you draft such an ordinance. And I looked at the other ordinances, mostly passed by cities, if you'll notice. And I think one of the big factors they're dealing with, which we are not, is public transit. Almost all of the ordinances talk about you must wear a mask if you cannot socially distance from others. So there's one big if in terms of enforcement. What age? Under 2, under 6, under 12, don't have to wear a mask. Who do you ticket? Do you ticket the parent? Do you ticket the kid? How much do you charge? Is it going to be an infraction? Is it going to be a minor misdemeanor? Do you want to make it civil or criminal? What happens? What fine do you want to set? And what happens if people don't pay? And then you have the collateral consequences, which are a topic of conversation about, unfortunately, a lot of the broken windows type of enforcement, these nuisance crimes that get enforced, they often can be a source or a moment of escalation, and even in the worst cases, very uneven enforcement on different groups in society. So there are a lot of downsides to enforcement that people also need to consider. And given that I am so grateful that the numbers in Greene County have held steady with very, very low percentage of our people. And by the way, I imagine we get as many visitors or fewer than over on Fairfield Road. You know, Yellow Springs isn't the only place in Greene County that attracts a lot of visitors from all over the region. So at this moment, I certainly am very uncomfortable with throwing an ordinance up there on the screen that none of us have seen without really thinking through these issues about how this is enforced and what's it really going to take. I think it's going to take an extra officer at least noon to 7 on the weekends to do real enforcement. And we don't have the staff right now. We're already overtaxing our staff. I could say a lot more, but those are the basic things that I wanted to bring forward. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Laura. Do we have other comments from community members? And if you can try to raise your hand or let me know.
Brian, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Mayor Pam. I had some audio problems earlier. Can you hear me?
We can.
You can. Great. Then I'll unmute and my video and my sound. And if I may make some comments now before the public weighs back in, I sort of want to follow up from what Kevin and Laura, Megan were saying. You know, I was one of the ambassadors on Saturday for about 2.5 hours. And not only that, but I have been biking, walking for the last couple of months very intentionally through town so I could gain some sort of awareness of the percentage of mask wearing, increasing, decreasing, whatever. Very anecdotal, but nonetheless, the numbers were definitely going up. And I would be, because I watched it and kept track, Saturday, 1 to 3:30, there was approximately 90% compliance in the main part of the CBD downtown. I realized once we get out on the periphery, Dayton Street, whatever, the bike path area, that the percentage of mask wearers goes down. Nonetheless, my guiding question, and I'm skipping some notes here because I want to cut to the chase. My guiding question is always, how would an ordinance differ from the resolution that we currently have? And this goes to Megan's point of, heck, half the neighboring counties already think that we have a ordinance. Section 1, all persons within the area of the village zoned the CBD shall be required to maintain physical distance, required to wear facial coverings, required to regularly sanitize their hands. So the question then becomes, what's the other side of the coin going to look like? It's time to talk about enforcement. And for that question, I started looking at some of the state proclamations and the language that was in some of the state declarations. And without exception, what I found was that for the most part, the onus of the ordinance taking care of the punishment end of it, if you will, the enforcement, fell to local officials. Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Montana, South Carolina, South Dakota, starting off with Governor Roy Cooper in North Carolina. I read his very carefully. And while he recommended and said that we should wear face coverings in our state, the responsibility and the onus for the enforcement fell to the local law enforcement. And there are a lot of states who went that direction. Now, with that said, in Yellow Springs, at this point in time, we have self-compliance. Well, what's this going to look like? Now, I have said over and over in both town meetings and on this sort of council, when I say this could turn into a law enforcement nightmare, I'm not talking about the mayor's court. The mayor's court's fine. You charge them, bring them to the mayor's court, and we'll take care of them. I'm talking about from the police department perspective and the policing angle. So I thought, well, what's happening in smaller villages or cities more of our own size? So with that in mind, I tried to find something written in Greene County, and this is another issue. This is new. Even in Dayton, this is very new material, and they don't really have an existing public record of how many fines they've issued, what it's looking like in court, and so forth, because it's so new. So what I did was I pulled up something from Mayor Ben Kessler. Mayor Ben's from the city of Bexley here in Ohio, and I was able to finally put my hand on an enforcement document. So what they're doing in Bexley, enforcement, 4 steps. Number 1, and my guess is that Yellow Springs would look something like this. An initial verbal warning shall be issued, along with information about the mask ordinance in effect, by the code, what they call their code enforcement officer. Could be health department because it's written under a certain code, 660.02, which deals with public contagion. An initial verbal warning by the code enforcement officer who must witness the violation. He or she has to be able to see it. So they give the verbal warning. Secondly, person does it again. Second time, a second written warning shall be issued by the code enforcement officer. But again, they have to be able to witness and to see it. Finally, after that, any subsequent violations, should the person commit for a third time, they're referred to the police department, and then they pursue with their ordinary violation of ordinances. Now, what this would be, if it does get to mayor's court, if people get a fine and they don't pay it, and they ignore it, or they crumple it up in front of you, or whatever, it still comes to mayor's court. And ultimately, what would happen is, if they don't show up for court, they get a letter. The letter reminds them, oh, sorry, you missed your court date. And that's followed up with either a letter, or the clerk will make a phone call if the person has a live number. If they don't show up a second time to court 2 weeks later, then we get into issues that could involve, and this is very important to realize, could involve license forfeitures through the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and hold on license registrations, that sort of thing. In other words, the person wouldn't be able to drive legally either a license block or a license registration unless they paid their fines. So that's the sort of territory we're getting into. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, I'm just saying this is the direction in which it would go. It's up to our council to determine whether they want the ordinance in place. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was seeing what similar area communities were doing, those that have a public record of it. And the fine, if there's a fine, that will be up to the purview of our council. As to what that is, some are going low, $40 or so, and some are heading upwards to, we're talking minor misdemeanors, $120, even more. So enough said about that. Let's return to the citizens. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mayor Pam. I know Troy said he had his hand up. Can jump in next, please.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, council. I have to say, there are so many other things I would rather be doing right now than to be sitting through this council listening to yet another mask argument after a long day at work. But I care enough about my community and the people in it to be here, to fight for this. we seem to go around in circles every meeting about this. And I see so many of you sitting on your hands and wondering, well, what do we do about this? And what do we do about that? I think we're beyond this time now. We're running out of time. That clock has run out. And we need to make a decision with teeth. Dayton has done it. Other cities have done it. This could look very kind. I had made the suggestion to have our police department be our brand ambassadors, right? To be our mask ambassadors, to follow the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. If we are not harming anybody, hand the warning out, right? If we are in harm's way, hand the ticket out, right? I don't know. It's an emotional time. You know, for all I know, we could be facing another lockdown in Ohio coming up. I've heard those rumors, right? I just think that a decision needs to be made. And I thank you for allowing me to speak, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Other comments?
Brian, we have a few hands up. Don Johnson, Kate Hamilton, Matthew Kirk.
Okay.
Trisha.
Okay, let's start with, well, why don't you just call on them because the hands are not showing on my screen, so.
Kate Hamilton.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So a lot of what has been said by Troy, I support. I also know it has been mentioned, but there is a petition with 191 plus signatures. I did get a lot of messages today from people asking me if they could still sign it. These are actual residents of Yellow Springs, a bit more than 27 from the chamber who want a mask ordinance. I also got probably about 3 or 4 messages today from people I don't know who live in town, who are villagers, who are upset. They're upset about the laundromat with no masks on there. I connected them to the health department. The health department doesn't cover it. They said they were uncomfortable when they go in there asking people to wear masks. I don't know what to tell them. I've put free masks there. You know, without a law, without an ordinance, there are a type of people that are not going to follow anything. Yes, there are ambassadors there from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those are babysitters. They prove the point that there needs to be an ordinance because people will behave better when they know that they are accountable, when they know that they are being watched. Unfortunately, certain people, you got to hit them in the wallet. They're not going to respect you and they're not going to wear a mask. We have to be strong. We're too late in the game. In April, when everything was shut down, our stats were lower than they are now. You know, like we literally should be shut down right now. And if you want commerce and if you want people to come and shop in our community, then they have to feel safe to do that. I am not safe to go to Tom's because there are people out front congregating without masks. I will get a membership to Costco. I have not been able to go downtown to shop in 4 months. My children have not seen their family, their cousins, their friends in 4 months. We sacrifice for others, okay? I'm privileged. I'll admit it. I have a lot of privilege. I don't have to go out. I work from home. My husband works from home. Our kids can stay home. But I care. Like, I have no other agenda except to care for our workers, our employees, like our village workers. You have to work out there in this. You have to risk your lives, and you're expected to wear masks, but nobody else is expected to give you the same courtesy. So we have people coming into our downtown and it's a Tom's and it's a, you know, all the different shops, and you're not giving our employees the same courtesy that we're giving them. We have to protect each other. This is so classist. And I have no agenda on this. I am the privileged, you know, the white privilege, whatever. So I'm upset. I want to protect my fellow villagers. I want to protect the workers. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kate. Matthew Kirk.
Hey, thanks, Brian, for calling on me. Can you guys hear me? Excellent. So I want to first commend the village leadership for, I think, doing an excellent job. When I compare what the Village of Yellow Springs response to the current crisis is compared to everywhere else, I think we're doing fantastic. I've been to some places outside of the village where I truly have felt uncomfortable. And in the village, even when I've encountered some people along the sidewalks or other places where they aren't wearing masks, it's usually not been a high congestion point and very easily to socially distance along with the mask wearing, which is, you know, clearly a key component of it. And I think what we're dealing with here in large part is, and it's unfortunate, is that this issue has become political. This is a political issue now. It's not as simple as, you know, this is what the right public health decision is. You have people who are not wearing masks, and it's not because they're unaware, they don't know, whatever. But they're essentially, as a parent to some small children, you know, they're throwing a temper tantrum. And when my kids throw a temper tantrum, I don't give them the time of day. I let them work that out. And I think that's what we're going to have to do with these adults. Unfortunately, we're in this for the long haul. Nothing is changing in the near future, barring some kind of medical miracle. And so what we've done so far is we have built a really positive culture, whereas a lot of places now that have not had the foresight to do that are left to very few options but to go this enforcement route, which as you delve deeper into that, you realize that that is very nebulous and in and of itself is likely a political statement. You know, it's largely being passed by mayors that are opposed to Donald Trump. And hey, I'm also opposed to Donald Trump. But the reality is, you know, if you look at what we're doing versus what Dayton's doing, I think they need to do more things like we're doing. Probably more on a neighborhood community level is what their strategy needs to be. A broad-based ordinance, you know, that's not helping out their police officers. And I don't think putting this onto our police officers is helpful either. I think what we've done so far as establishing a positive relationship between the community leadership and volunteers and encouraging mask wearing is honestly a lot of things that a lot of other communities are going to want to follow. So again, I just think we need to stay the course. It's a very emotional time, and it's easy to get caught up in saying, hey, you know, let's just put our fists down and people are going to fall in line. But that's just unfortunately not how people are. You know, there's a lot of people that we're going to have to nudge along. This is little by little. You know, a lot of people jump on early, right? We get like 80% of the people out of the gate. They get it. Those last people, though, and that's what we're dealing with now. We've got those holdouts. And so I think what they want is for us to crack down on them. And instead, I think it would be refreshing to take the approach that we're taking. So thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
Brian,
yes.
Brian, I'd like to say something.
Yes.
So this conversation could go on for a long time. Clearly, there are a lot of people very concerned, and most of the people that are concerned are asking for an ordinance. We have other things on our agenda, and I don't want to have to deal with this at every council meeting and end up not being able to deal with other things. I personally do not support an ordinance, and I, at this point, would not vote for it. I think it's sort of like the barking dog thing. You know, are we going to have police like hiding around a corner waiting until someone doesn't have their mask on? Because if they don't want to wear their mask, they can take it with them, put it on if there's an officer, and take it off. The Dayton ordinance is complaint driven. So I don't think that it would be effective. I don't really support it. At the same time, I don't want to keep having this conversation going on. So I think that we should call a vote. And if the majority of council says we should have an ordinance, then the next, I don't know if there's one that we have now, but at the next meeting have it, and if we don't. But I mean, we can keep talking about this, and then all of the other things that we want to do, either we're not going to do or we're going to be here till 11 o'clock. And I don't particularly want to do that. We already started at 6:30.
Okay, let's, since I heard Dawn Johnson was in the queue, I'm gonna let her comment, and then we'll talk about some decision making. So Dawn?
You're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Dawn.
Okay, hi. Thank you for taking the time to discuss this again. I really appreciate it because it's so very important. A lot of people at different times of the day, I drove around on Sunday once every hour, and I saw the compliance go from 30% all the way up to like 70%, but never anything higher than 70. And I went down Dayton, across to Xenia, and then back out. I had several errands to run, and I took that opportunity to do a visual windshield survey. But that's not why I'm here. What I'm talking about here is this report. It just came out today. It's signed by almost 300 infectious disease experts, and they're talking about airborne transmission. And they're not talking about necessarily just the kinds of things that we've been doing, the social distancing. They're talking about the particles that if I wear this and you wear it, there's a 95% chance we're not going to be spreading those very small viral particles. And this report that's published just today in Infectious Disease Society of America talks about that really being a major source of transmission. So if we're asking our workers, we're making our workers wear a mask, but 30%, heck, even 25% of the customers can come in without a mask on, and one of them, just one of them, carries enough viral load to transmit, there's a good chance that somebody else who's in the store without a mask on, or one of the workers that has to go to work, who's having to wear their mask, they're still potentially going to pick up enough viral load to make themselves sick and then potentially make their family members sick. Or maybe they're asymptomatic and they carry it out and they give it to someone else. We know how this happens. This isn't really a mystery, but what is being revealed is we're not talking just about wash your hands. We're not talking about stay just 6 feet apart. These very small particles travel like 20 meters. And I know it's really hard to think about how we're going to enforce this. I get it. It's something new. But when seatbelts were new, we figured out how to enforce that. When, we don't let people go into a restaurant without shoes on, we learned how to enforce that. And I get it. The village doesn't necessarily have all the mechanisms in place. But that doesn't mean you stop talking about it. It doesn't mean you stop working on it. It doesn't mean you put it to bed, because it's not going away. And we really need to protect our workers. We need to protect 65% of us in this village are in that high risk category already because of our age. We're your taxpayers. You need to protect us. It's just unreasonable not. I don't want to get too shrill on you guys, because I know you don't like my shrill, but really that's what we're talking about. We have a vulnerable population that pays the taxes to this village that can't even go downtown right now because there are certain members in our community who know they don't have to wear a mask, so they're not going to. And you may tell them they have to. You may paint little things on the sidewalk and encourage them to. They're still not going to do that. The thing that's going to hit them is a compliance mechanism. And until you have that, you are jeopardizing our vulnerable population. And you're making it so we can't even enjoy our town. So you have a responsibility as our elected servants to do something that creates compliance. So that's it.
All right, thanks, Don. So I know council members will probably want to say a few other things. I want to highlight a few ideas, and actually there are some draft ordinances that we could look at tonight. So I think first of all, and I'm not going to get into it, but I hope that most people like really look at the reality of like the Dayton ordinance and others and what Pam was pointing out, and the fact that Dayton has Montgomery County Public Health recommending that they do this. We do not have Greene County Public Health doing that. But what I want to talk more about is based on the 3 days I spent full-time downtown, there were several categories of people that would likely get tickets or fines or whatever. Mary Ann already referred to, I guess, our most famous community member and his group who were downtown all 3 days not wearing masks. I did put a mask in his hand. Our youth, Mary Ann talked about that as well. We've got our street musicians and street vendors. And then there's this other group that's going to be a lot more difficult, which is folks that are distanced, but we don't see them with a mask. So that being said, two things I asked for our new solicitor to draft were ordinances, an ordinance that would put a temporary ban on busking on street musicians downtown. And so that specifically means on the sidewalks, because we know that the spacing, the distancing is very hard. That is something that I think makes a lot of sense. I agree we should do. And then a second idea was to make it very clear that our street vendors who are renting spaces from other businesses, they are an extension of their employees. They need to wear masks. So those are two things that I think will make a significant difference and continue to make the village more safe. I'm going to let Lisa talk next, and I think ultimately we need to make some decisions about what if anything, we're going to do tonight. So Lisa? You're on mute.
I don't really have anything much to say beyond what I've already said, except for to say, and I don't say this very often because I don't stand on my credentials. I just don't sling it around, but I'm a registered nurse with a PhD. I work in education and I'm following the science. And I know this is uncomfortable and difficult to enforce. I would like to hear what Chief Carlson has to say about the feasibility of this. I understand the risk of disparate impact on poor people and young people, and we will have to figure this out. But we do need to put the science and the health of our community absolutely first and foremost. And, you know, I would maybe be negotiated back if we, you know, required masks in all businesses and in restaurants if you're not eating. And I mean, I really just think we can do this. I think we can do this. And I think that as mask ambassadors, the only difference is like, look, you don't want a warning, do you? So put on this mask, you know, put on this mask, right? Or get out of town. And that's where I am at this point.
Thanks, Lisa. And yeah, definitely Chief Carlson is in the queue because he's also going to talk about specifically what the protocol and process that his officers are following are. I mean, I do want to highlight, remember, we do also have public health officials that have spoken about this. So, you know, there are a lot of credentialed people coming from all different sides. So Chief Carlson.
Thank you, Brian. One of the challenges, if you will, of the work that I do is opinion is not my job. But before I reply to what we're talking about now, I am going to do just a small moment of opinion. Put the darn mask on. That's all you have to do.
Oh, please.
Okay, so opinion is over. Regarding enforcement, I put together some information based on the ordinances that have passed in Ohio. And there was actually a good piece on WHIO that kind of listed what are the basic questions that as citizens, most people are asking. What does the ordinance require? All individuals when in an enclosed space with others, unless exempted, must cover their nose and mouth. Do I have to wear a mask outside? No, unless you cannot maintain 6 feet distance from individuals outside your household. However, if social distancing is not practical, or if you are waiting in line outside of a business, then a mask must be worn. What is a place of business? A place in which commerce is conducted and the public visits. Do I have to wear a mask at a religious facility? This is kind of across the board with most of the city ordinances that have passed. Individuals are not required to wear masks at religious facilities. However, the city, along with the CDC and many other public health officials, strongly recommend the wearing of masks at any public place. Does my place of business need to require people to wear masks? Yes. I won't go into the litany of that. It's just a resounding yes. Do I need to wear a mask while in RTA bus or other public transit vehicles? Yes. Are employees required to wear masks? Yes. I have a medical condition that prevents me from wearing a mask. Will I be punished? No. When does the ordinance take effect? The rest of the questions are based on timing, individuality of the ordinances and such. You know, if officers are required to enforce mask wearing, we will do our job. That's what we're paid to do. Public safety is our #1 priority. There are many, many obstacles that we are facing right now in society. We do have a sufficient budget as a small department for a village. We are extending our overtime tremendously in the past 2 months regarding protests and marches. And those have taken our valuable time as well downtown, working with the community and officers on foot patrol. Our temperature and climate is extremely high. And if you thought it was hot outside this weekend, put on a blue polyester uniform with 36 pounds of gear and a mask. We will have difficulty enforcing this because it can't be based on citizen complaints. My personal idea that I believe would work is if we do or do not pass an ordinance, I believe we could change some of the messaging that we have. You must wear a mask from this point on. You must wear a mask to enter this facility. I think that would step it up. I think that's something we could do immediately. And I think it's something that we would be able to use as well in our messaging. I hope that this information has helped you all.
All right, thanks, Chief. Okay, so I think, well, let me allow, does any other council member want to make any final comments?
Well, Brian, I'd just like to say, reading from the Ohio Department of Health frequently asked questions, there are many conditions where mask wearing is counterindicated. And in Columbus, somebody just simply has to say they have one of these conditions and they don't have to wear the mask. I think what Chief was trying to say is there's so many variables on the street that it's really difficult to say who is rightly or wrongly wearing a mask or if they're not wearing a mask. I think it's very difficult to enforce, and we don't have the staff to enforce it. I hear what people are saying, but I don't think that can do more than we've done. You know, Bexley is looking for 80% compliance. I think we're already there. They've made a second offense of first-degree misdemeanor with 180 days in jail as a possible penalty. I don't want to go that direction. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Okay, so here's what I'm going to propose. I'm going to make some motions, and they will be progressive, and let's see where we go. So I guess the first thing is I'd like to make a motion that we put a temporary prohibition on street musicians in the downtown area on our sidewalks until the end of the year, and then we can revisit that. Is there a second? Okay.
I'll second that.
I see Mary Ann seconding. So Judy, let's just call a vote on whether council wants to do this.
All right, Krieger,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Who did I just miss? Curlis,
No.
Hausch.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, second motion is to require street vendors who are an extension of employees and should be wearing masks to wear a mask downtown.
I move.
Second, okay. All right, so I'll take that as a second, Mary Ann. And Judy, let's call the roll on that one, please.
McQueen,
Yes.
Curlis,
No.
Stokes,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes. And so my understanding is that we do have legislation that could be ready to go and make this happen immediately. Okay, so the third motion, actually, Lisa, I'm going to let you make the motion.
I move that we vote yes for an enforceable ordinance requiring masks in the downtown business district, and understanding that we'll have to work out the details of how we're going to approach enforcement.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, and Judy, could you call the roll?
Just a minute, clarification.
Yes.
I'm not clear whether, Lisa, whether you're asking for a vote on preparing an ordinance, or are you asking for a vote, yes, you want to have an ordinance making mask wearing, social distancing, and maybe hand washing an offense? Can you clarify?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do want that ordinance. I mean, I feel that
you're calling for a vote on such an ordinance.
I am, but here's the thing. I share the concerns about how we're going to enforce it, what the penalties might be, what the increments of that are. We have to work that out. And so I know that for the many of us who details and specifics like that are extremely important. And our PD can't possibly enforce what, enforce what. So I get your question,
I just
Mary Ann, but yeah, but I am making the same call out that I did at the last council meeting, and that is that we put in place an enforceable ordinance to require masks in the downtown business district.
And my second of that motion is in concert with my previous statements that enforcement has yet to be worked out, as Lisa mentioned in her motion.
So can I clarify something?
Yes.
So I think where Mary Ann is experiencing some confusion is, Lisa, I'm assuming that you are asking for such an ordinance to be brought to the table at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And we could even have an emergency meeting too.
Okay, so this is process.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm fine with having an ordinance be brought. I'm going to vote against it, but I do want it to be brought. So that's why I'm trying to decide whether I'm if I want to know what I'm saying yay or nay to.
So yeah, I think that would be.
I would prefer to have an emergency meeting. I think 2 weeks from now is too long. And then we're getting into the heat more of the summer, and then we're on break for a week. I'm going to be, as you all know, away. So I would like an emergency meeting to vote on an ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's good because I agree the details matter. So I think we've heard that there are 3 council members that want to look at that ordinance further. I'm open to that as well. So I guess the next thing will be to figure out scheduling a special meeting, but I don't know, maybe we do that later since we've been running pretty long.
Brian, if I may.
Yes.
This will require working out the timing with the new attorney to see what her time frame would be to get something feasible, ready to go, and then we need proper notice for the emergency meeting. So if you don't mind me following up with that and then putting out a request, I'll handle the back end.
Okay. Yeah, and I would say, to Lisa's point, let's do it as soon as possible. Okay. Yeah, and I think maybe, I'm sorry, this is all new for all of us. I don't know what's the best way to call the vote, but mostly I think that indication that we want to, look at this further is important at this point.
And Brian, just to further clarify, would that emergency meeting can encompass all 3 of the ordinances you just discussed? You made motions for 3 separate ordinances. Those could all be brought to that emergency meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, as long as we do it soon.
Could I ask a question, please? Would it also be possible to have an enforceable ordinance brought for review that mandates masks inside business and restaurants when not eating?
Yes. I think that's good. Okay. So I guess I'm going to close out this discussion by saying one thing, Josue and Chief, we need is on paper, a clear process, procedure, detailed what our peace officers are doing to enforce the current resolution. So my thoughts around that are, how many times a day are officers walking around downtown? How many masks do they carry with them? What's their approach? All those kinds of things, because a lot of the chat and things I'm seeing are suggesting, that nothing's being done, that our officers aren't doing anything. And again, this whole idea that we're not enforcing, which is not true. So that is an important document that we're going to need moving forward as well.
We'll have that in all reports moving forward, Brian.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, Josue, were you wanting to say something before we end this conversation?
Well, I appreciate all the discussion on the point of our law enforcement. We are promoting mask wearing and enforcing mask wearing in a kind way, and what we're allowed to do now. That's Brian, I think you witnessed on this weekend where we had a busker and the difficulty of enforcing it on an individual that's really close up to the street, and they're adamant and combative and refusing to wear a mask. Having the tool available is an extra tool in the toolbox. But these are one-offs, and they're not one-off, but these are particular individuals with particular requires a particular response, and that's an approach that we will develop specifically for those individuals. But for everyone else, the response I've heard from chief and officers is that folks are being approached and they're being offered a mask, and folks are taking it. I know the last count going into the end of the week was over 150 masks were given recently. Brian, do you have an updated number?
How many we gave away this weekend? Over 500.
Sorry, I was asking Chief Carlson.
Oh, sorry.
Out through the police.
Yeah, Josue, we're about 300 to date. And the enforcement side of this is difficult because we do not have an ordinance, but we are getting pretty good at how we approach folks. And what I am noticing are how many people we ask, would you like a mask? And they'll have one in their pocket or they're not wearing them. But I believe their assumption is that when they go into an establishment, they'll put the mask on. So I will put together some hard numbers for you, Brian, and Josue, and I'll work on those and we'll get those to you tomorrow.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Very important discussion. I hope everybody realizes, even though this is emotional, everyone cares about everyone in this community and are invested in making decisions that will actually keep people safe. And we're going to keep working on it. All right, so we're going to move. Yes.
Brian, process, please. So we are now at, if we were following our agenda, our meeting would be over. And we have probably another hour of things, and I would like to agree upon what we're not going to talk about. I don't want to go until 10:30. So, I mean, at this point, I feel like the energy, at least my energy, is pretty much done.
Yep.
So, I think we should not do the rest of, I'm going to suggest that we not talk about the racism issue. I don't think I think that's so important, and I don't think at 9:30 or whatever it is that we have the energy that it deserves. I don't know how much village finance we have to talk about. I'll do my letter of support another time. I'm going to suggest Laura does her letter of support another time. I suggest we don't do the boards and commission thing. I don't know if we need to do any nominations, and I'd suggest that the manager's report be very short and that we get out of here in about 15 minutes.
That works for me. Any other council members have a different thought about the agenda? Okay. All right, Josue.
All right. My point would be that we can, my manager's reports included in the packet. I would like to bring one issue up, and I think it's brief, and we can talk about the rest of the manager's report at a later time or in the next council meeting. You want me to dive into the one issue that I think is very important to have council be informed on?
Yes, and then also let's do that update about the pool.
Okay, excellent. So let me know when you want me to start. All right.
You're good.
All right. So actually, two things on the village finances, including the update and budget management. We're still on target with the projections that were made early on by the Regional Income Tax Administration Agency. So there's no new update there. We're tracking with the projections. So things are holding steady. So that's a quick update. The other piece, we have a petition from a local resident who is also a local business owner, a food truck owner, and they're petitioning us for dedicating food truck vending space. The initial request was for parking, on-street parking spaces. Our zoning code explicitly prohibits that. What can be allocated is parking spaces, particularly on the railroad lot, the 4 parking spaces that are closest to the street. We don't have any reason in our rules and regulations to say no. So we can encourage the petition to come through the planning and zoning process as a conditional use application. But I wanted council to be aware of this petition, and if there are any particular concerns that council would have, we will ensure to make sure to address that. Currently, our thinking is that we would have this as a conditional use process, so every individual vendor looking to engage in this business activity in the parking lot would have to come before planning and zoning for a conditional use permit. There will be a fee associated. The fee we've come up with an initial fee of $50, $25 to cover the space, and $25 to cover electricity. We would make electricity available at the site to reduce the impact on noise, the noise generated by generators. They would obviously be responsible for the maintenance and upkeep while they're in the space. That includes being responsible for trash, cleaning gray water. They will also be responsible for issuing a liability certificate and making the village a certificate holder, and they would hold us harmless for any activities that happen while they're there. So that's the general, the overview of the petition. Any concerns?
So Josue, I'm going to say this is probably going to fall into the category of I'm not sure everyone's ready to discuss and process this tonight. So
right, and no decisions being made at the moment. This still has to go through a process there, the planning and zoning process, and that has, as you know, it has its own hearing process where the public has a mechanism of weighing in. There are 2 council members that sit on the planning and zoning commission, and that's also another vehicle for council to raise its opinion and concerns.
Can I make a suggestion that Denise write a full report on it for council to consider at their next meeting?
Yeah,
that's great. Okay. All right. So the pool.
The pool. I think the specific question from Laura was to consider expanding the resident-only days, which are Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to allow for more residents. We have been talking about that for some time now. We are facing some challenges around the pool, managing of the pool, the water of the pool. We've seen issues around the clarity of the water and the chlorine levels of the water, and some of it is due to 2 particular items. One, folks not showering before the pool, before entering the water, and 2, folks using body lotion and suntan lotions and sunblocks, and the heat. So these things are creating turbidity in the water, and we're concerned about increasing the volume of participants in the pool. In the recent weeks, we've had to close off portions of the pool, particularly the deep end, so that we could limit the number of individuals in the pool. So with that in mind, we're not in the position to allow more participants in the pool, because we're trying to maintain the right amount of folks from entering the pool. But that's something that's on our radar. I think we're looking to roll the guest policy within the next 2 weeks. But we want to make you aware of the limitations and the challenges that we're seeing around the restrictions on the showers and folks using lotions. This is particularly challenging because there's less folks using the shower as in previous seasons.
Okay. Thanks, Josue. Do council members have any other questions about Josue's manager's report? Okay.
I mentioned earlier that we launched the citizen engagement, so check out our Facebook and YouTube, check out the video, download the app, and that is a new mechanism for you to raise your concerns. Submit requests for services. That could be anything from if there's a neighbor with an overgrown weeds and you want us to take a look at, or there's a pothole somewhere, uneven or dangerous sidewalk. That's our citizen engagement portal.
Yeah, which looks great. I'm so glad we've got that set up. Yeah, that reminded me, Josue, we probably should also mention that we did convene a group to talk about the our justice system and addressing racism, systemic racism. And so we will obviously be talking about some of the things we're going to move forward at our next meeting. Okay, so with that, any items for future agenda?
Brian,
Yeah.
Judith Ezekiel has her hand up.
Okay, Judith?
Yes, I wanted to say, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to say something about the pool. I'm a daily swimmer, and although I've been totally on lockdown, other than that, because I have a physical condition, I have fibromyalgia, and swimming keeps my pain at bay. So I've been swimming daily, and I know that I'm not the only one who swims because of physical need. I know I'm not the only one who's high risk. Most of us are older. A lot of us have conditions. And I think the idea of opening up, at least for the adult swim, I can't judge the rest of the day, is absolute madness. Last Friday, which is, one of the Yellow Springs days, there were 14 people in the pool. There's 6 lines, about 6 feet between them. That is 5 lanes of 6 feet, plus a couple feet on each end. There were 14 people, and the calculation that I make, if you take out the body mass, is that there were only between 1 and 2 feet between people swimming. And several of us got out of the pool because we judged it to be too dangerous. In addition to the swimmers, there are walkers. A couple of them have been very nice and have been wearing masks. Some do not. So if you're swimming 1 foot away from somebody walking, the exposure risk is increased. I've written already to Josue saying that, they've increased the hours, which is lovely. There are 3 days a week where there are 2 hours in the morning, and those mornings are manageable. And it would be really wonderful if every morning had 2 hours. But the idea of opening up to more people is, in addition, I mean, I'm more concerned with, with dying from COVID than I am with the water clarity. I know that that's an issue as well, but I think our priority we need to look at this as well, and opening it up to more people, I think, is absolute madness.
Thanks, Judith. Okay, so yes.
Judith, thank you, and I welcome all your emails and letters you sent, and I appreciate you acknowledging that we've expanded those 2-hour lap swim during the week hours, and I know that they have been helpful to you and others. So thank you for your support as we look to refine our program. That's so important.
Any future agenda items?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to comment on Gina Marie Cox. She is available to come to our next meeting. I've had one discussion with her, and I suggested that given the change in the landscape regarding the COVID virus, that she give a more general presentation about what the foundation has been doing during this time and the different kinds of grants and loans and that whole thing that they've been doing, including what might happen to the village. But I just think that things are different now than when I'd initially asked her to come.
Yep, that makes sense. And there certainly is a lot going on that the Community Foundation is supporting. So that sounds great. Okay, anything else? I'm sorry.
Well, you're stacking up because there's a lot you didn't get to this time. So I might suggest that report from Gina Marie be in writing, and then maybe address questions with her during the meeting as opposed to giving a full report. That's for discussion later. You got the resolution for the grant to YS Home Inc. You have scheduled the comprehensive land use plan update, which may take a little time. You need your report on your conditional use plan for Railroad Street, your update on racism as a public health emergency, finance update, and your commission report still need to happen.
Yep. Lisa, did you have something?
Well, I did really just want to make sure that my proposal to rename Short Street as Freedom Court and keep the plaza on the weekends moves forward.
Yes.
I now have buy-in from all of the businesses that are around there, including the hardware store, the bank, everybody. So, you know, there's no resistance from the businesses at this point.
Cool. Yeah, it would be amazing to see that happen, you know, now. I mean, what do we need to do?
Let's pull that out as a separate item then for the next meeting, as opposed to folding it into the update on declaring racism a public health crisis. I think it's a more immediate, actionable item.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Anything else for future? Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, I had asked for an agenda item to talk about block parties, but instead of us discussing it, I would think maybe just Josue and staff should just make some declaration one way or the other. You know, are we gonna support block parties? I suspect.
No, no block parties.
All right.
Let's
good.
not even bother discussing it. Don't
Okay.
do it.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. So how about this? Before we adjourn, can everybody pull out their calendars and let's figure out this special meeting? Because I at least want the ones we agreed on to be decided before this weekend.
Yeah, well, is Brianne still present? Can she give us a time frame as to when she can have an ordinance prepared?
I'll be able to give you a better time frame tomorrow morning when I meet with staff. Because I've got some other things that I need to be doing for staff.
Mm-hmm. Well, Judy, we at least have 2 ordinances that are ready that we've decided we want to go forward with, right? So if we have the 3rd, that would be great too.
And Brian, I did say that I would like to see a 4th, because if the council won't vote in favor of having masks required in downtown business district, period, I would like to have a fallback ordinance that at minimum they're required in all businesses and restaurants.
Okay.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Yep.
And I think those both need to be Brianne's purview.
Okay.
Since one is backing up the other potentially. So again, that goes sort of to her time frame.
Okay, but we do have drafts for I mean, it's not complicated to figure out the temporary prohibition for street musicians, and just we need to enforce the street vendor thing. So I would like that to be official by the end of the day Thursday, so that can be in effect on Friday.
What do you mean? I'm not.
So okay. I want to start letting people know that they, you know, this is what needs to happen moving forward. So,
Well, when you say official, I'm not sure what you mean.
So we have decided tonight that there's a temporary prohibition on street musicians downtown. That needs to be enacted right away. So if we yeah.
I did not get that. I thought that you were voting on bringing an ordinance.
That was my impression as well. That we would be bringing an ordinance to the special meeting.
Yes.
Vote.
So when is the soonest that we can meet that will allow for public noticing of the meeting?
It's a minimum. Well, I mean, well, that's a question for Brianne. If you can get away with this as an emergency, which you probably can, given the current situation, you just need time to make that public notice. You could hold your emergency meeting on Wednesday.
Okay. I'm available.
Yeah.
I'm available anytime on Wednesday.
I'm leaving town at noon.
I've got planning and zoning on Wednesday. BCA, sorry.
How about Wednesday morning?
I
can do early before 10.
But I've got things scheduled Wednesday morning because I'm planning to be here Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening.
How about Wednesday afternoon? What time are you here? Is Wednesday still on the table or not at all?
I think we've got to do it by Wednesday because Lori, I mean, it sounds like you're leaving for maybe more than just Wednesday, right?
I'm leaving for 2 weeks. I'll be available if I have to be, if I'm not in a remote location.
Okay.
And you know, we have the Zoom option, so. But you do need a supermajority to pass these. You're doing them as emergencies, so.
Okay. All right, so we decided we're going to do sometime Wednesday afternoon?
Go from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock.
We've got availability here Wednesday from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Then it's the BZA and the virtual town hall.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna lose me after 2 o'clock, but you can. That's neither here nor there. I have doctor's appointments, so.
Okay, so 1 o'clock?
Can Laura Curlis attend at that time?
Will you be able to call in, Laura?
I will delay my leaving. I wouldn't have this meeting at all, but I will be there.
All right, thanks, Laura. I appreciate that. Okay, Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
And a second? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Have a good drink. I mean, have a good evening.
I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, exactly right.